and I found the violation notice frozen to my front gate at 6:12 in the morning, right when the sky was that dirty blue color it gets before a winter sunrise, and for a second I just stood there with one glove on, one glove off, wondering if my neighbors had started drinking before breakfast. The paper was laminated, because apparently the people who fined me for snow understood weatherproofing better than common sense, and across the top, in bold red letters, it said, "Unauthorized tire impressions visible on residential snow surface. Fine amount, $175. Now, I have been moving snow for Harlan County, Minnesota since I was 24 years old. I have cleared roads in storms so bad the hood of my truck disappeared in front of me. I have pulled school buses out of ditches, opened emergency lanes for ambulances, and once spent 9 hours plowing through a whiteout with a cracked heater core and a gas station burrito fighting for its life in my stomach. So when somebody from the neighborhood association told me tire tracks in snow were a community violation, I did not get angry right away. I laughed, because sometimes life hands you stupidity so pure your brain refuses to treat it as a threat. My name is Mason Reed. I'm 48 years old, and I live on Briar Hook Lane, just outside a little town called Larch Falls, the kind of place where people know which truck is yours before they remember your last name, where winter does not arrive so much as move in, unpack, and start charging rent. My house sits at the end of a long, crushed limestone driveway, about 154 feet from the road, sloping down just enough that if you do not know how to feather the brake in February, you will meet the mailbox personally. My father built that place in 1989 with 2 cousins, a borrowed cement mixer, and the kind of stubbornness men used to call a plan. He planted the spruce trees along the drive when I was in middle school, and every winter, when the snow gets heavy on those branches, they lean over the driveway like old men keeping secrets. After Dad died, my mother tried to sell me the house for $1, which was her way of saying grief had made her bad at business. But I paid her what I could, because that house was not a favor. It was a promise. I still keep Dad's socket set in the garage, even though half the sockets are missing and the case smells like oil and mice, and there is a dent in the workbench from the day he dropped a snowblower engine block and said a word my mother pretended not to hear. So when the Briar Hook Homeowners Council started talking about my driveway like it was a stain on that brochure, I took it more personally than maybe I should have. But then again, people who call your memories an eyesore should not be surprised when you stop smiling. The woman behind it was Evelyn Strake, council president, former real estate consultant, current full-time professional eyebrow raiser. Evelyn had moved into Briar Hook Meadows about 4 years earlier with a slate-gray Mercedes SUV, a little white dog named Churchill, and the confidence of someone who believed every room needed a chairperson. Before she got elected, the council was mostly harmless. They sent reminders about trash bins, argued about mailbox paint, and once spent 3 meetings deciding whether solar garden lights counted as holiday decorations, which tells you exactly how exciting life was around here. But Evelyn turned it into something else. Suddenly we had seasonal compliance reviews, architectural harmony statements, driveway visibility standards, and violation notices written like they had been translated from English into lawsuit and back again. The first time she came up my driveway, it was late October, leaves wet on the ground, air smelling like wood smoke and rain, and I was changing the hydraulic hose on my plow rig. She walked up carefully, like the gravel might sue her shoes, holding a tablet against her chest. "Mr. Reed," she said, with a smile so tight it looked installed. "Mason is fine," I told her, wiping my hands on a rag. She glanced at the truck, then at the garage, then at the spruce trees, taking inventory without asking permission. "We are just conducting a friendly review of neighborhood presentation standards," she said. Friendly review is one of those phrases that means nothing good is about to happen. I asked what kind of standards, and she said things like visible equipment, exterior consistency, landscape discipline, and driveway appearance. Landscape discipline. I remember looking at her little dog, who was peeing on one of Dad's spruce trees at that exact moment, and thinking, well, there is your discipline. I did not say that, though. I was raised better, or at least slower. I said, "This place has looked about the same for 35 years, and nobody died from it." Her smile twitched. "Communities evolve, Mr. Reed." I nodded toward the road. "Around here, mostly they shovel, help each other jump dead batteries, and mind their own business." She looked at me for a beat too long, like I had handed her a puzzle with a piece missing, then said, "Progress can feel uncomfortable at first." That was Evelyn, in one sentence. She never threatened you directly, as she could wrap the threat in a throw pillow first. 2 weeks later, I got my first notice and proper storage of commercial apparatus in residential view. That meant my plow truck, a legally registered pickup with a county permit sticker and a blade attachment I used for work. I called Evelyn from the garage, trying to keep my voice even, because my wife, Natalie, was inside making dinner, and I had promised her years ago I would stop solving neighborhood problems with volume. Evelyn, I said, this is my work truck. It runs, it is insured, and it is part on my property. She gave me that soft little sigh people use when they are not listening but want credit for patience. Mason, no one is questioning your occupation. The concern is visual impact. Visual impact, I repeated. It is a truck, not a meteor crater. Commercial-grade vehicles can affect perceived property values, she said. I looked through the garage window at her perfect house down the lane, all beige stone and black shutters. The kind of house that looked like it had never heard a real argument. Evelyn, half the men in this county own trucks with blades. Not in this section, she said, and there it was. Not anger exactly, not even dislike, something colder. The belief that she had purchased not just a home but the right to edit everybody else's. I let that one go. I moved the truck farther back by the garage, not because I agreed, but because sometimes peace is worth 10 feet of driveway. Then winter came early. First storm rolled in, the week before Thanksgiving. Heavy wet snow at first, then colder overnight, the kind that packs down hard if you so much as breathe on it. I drove out for my county route at 3 in the morning, came back after sunrise, backed into my own driveway like I had done 1,000 times. And yes, the tires left tracks. Of course they did. Tires do that. That is why they work. By noon, the first snow surface violation was clipped to my gate. Natalie found me staring at it at the kitchen table, still in my bib overalls, coffee untouched. She read it once, then again, then looked at me and said, "Are they serious?" I said, "Either that or we have the most boring prankster in Minnesota." She did not laugh much. Natalie is a nurse, and nurses have a special relationship with nonsense. They see enough real problems that fake ones make them quietly dangerous. "Mason," she said, "this is not about snow." I knew what she meant, but I did not want to admit it yet. I wanted it to be a stupid fine, a misunderstanding, something that would go away if I made one calm phone call and reminded everyone we lived in a place where winter was not decorative. So I called Evelyn again. She answered like she'd been waiting with both hands folded. I told her tire tracks were unavoidable. She told me the issue was not the tracks themselves, but the disruption of visual uniformity across the snow-covered frontage. I said, "Evelyn, listen to what you just said out loud." She paused, then said, "Rules exist to preserve community standards." I looked out the window at my driveway, at the spruce trees my father had planted, at my plow truck sitting where I had moved it just to avoid trouble, and something in me tightened. Not snapped, not yet, just tightened. Over the next 3 weeks, the fines kept coming. $175 became $400, then $650, then a warning about continuing non-compliance. Every notice had that same polished language, like a machine had been taught to be petty. I shoveled more than usual, scraped the drive clean when I had time, parked differently, took pictures before and after storms. But the thing about people like Evelyn is that compromise does not satisfy them. It teaches them where you are willing to bend. By Christmas week, Natalie and I had a stack of envelopes in a drawer we used to keep takeout menus in, and every time I opened it, I felt a little embarrassed, which made me even angrier, because I had done nothing wrong except drive to work and come home. The final notice arrived on a Tuesday afternoon, after a 16-hour shift. I remember the truck engine ticking as it cooled, my shoulders aching, my socks wet, my whole body carrying that deep winter tide that settles into your bones like unpaid debt. The envelope was taped to the gate in a plastic sleeve. Final demand before lien review. Total outstanding balance, $2,874. I read it twice, then a third time, and the yard went very quiet around me. Not because the wind stopped, not because the snow stopped, because inside my head, something finally did. That night, after Natalie went to bed, I sat at the kitchen table with every notice spread out in front of me, along with photos, dates, weather reports, and notes from every conversation I could remember. Around midnight, she came out in her robe, hair messy, face soft with sleep, and stood in the doorway watching me. "You are not going to pay it, are you?" she said. I tapped the final notice with my pen. "They are threatening the house, Nat. Dad's house. Our house." She leaned against the counter, quiet for a while, then said, "What are you going to do?" I looked at the stack of papers, at Evelyn's signature printed clean and proud at the bottom of each one, and for the first time in weeks, I felt calm. I said, "I am going to find out what rules she forgot to read." The next morning I drove into town instead of going straight to the yard, and I will tell you right now, there is no place on earth that makes a man feel older than a county records office in January. The building in Larch Falls was brick, square, ugly in a dependable way, with a flag out front making that stiff, frozen snapping sound, and a front door that fought you like it had opinions. Inside, it smelled like floor wax, old paper, and coffee that had been sitting on a burner since the Clinton administration. I asked for road maintenance filings on Briarhope Meadows, and the clerk looked at me over her glasses like I had requested a human sacrifice before breakfast. Then she said, "You want public works? Second floor? Ask for Glenn." Glenn Hobb was one of those county guys who never seemed to move fast, but somehow got everything done before anyone else found the form. He'd been in public works longer than I'd been married, and he knew me from plow coordination meetings, which meant he trusted me just enough to insult me casually. "Mason Reed," he said when I stepped into his office, "if you are here to complain about potholes, take a number behind every person with a Buick." I dropped Evelyn's notices on his desk. Not potholes, snow tracks. He read the first page, then the second, and his eyebrows climbed so slowly I thought they might need oxygen. "They are finding you for tire marks in your own snow." "That is the cleanest way to say it," I told him. Glenn leaned back in his chair and gave a dry little laugh. "I have been here 31 years and I can say confidently, rich people have invented weather crimes." He turned one notice sideways, reading the enforcement language, then asked where exactly I lived. "Briarhook Lane, last house before the North Bend." His face changed then, not dramatically, just enough that my stomach paid attention. He turned to a flat file cabinet behind him, pulled open a drawer, and started flipping through old survey maps with the patience of a man who knew paper never hurried for anybody. "You ever hear anyone mention the North Bend designation?" he asked. I said no. He spread a map across the table, yellowed at the edges, stamped in purple ink from years back. There was Briarhook Lane, winding through the subdivision like a lazy piece of string, then connecting to an older fire road behind the tree line. Glenn tapped it with one thick finger. This stretch was designated as a secondary emergency access corridor in 2001, after that house fire on County 12. I remembered that fire. Everybody did. Family got out, but the trucks had trouble reaching them because the main road iced over. The county required alternate access for a few developments after that. Glenn kept going. "Your association is responsible for keeping it passable during declared weather events, unless the county assumes control. And the county only assumes control if there is a filed agreement or an active contractor coordination." He flipped to another sheet. "Here is the problem. Their registered snow removal agreement expired 18 months ago." I stared at him. "Expired." He nodded. "No renewal filed, no backup vendor, no current maintenance bond. They have been coasting." I actually laughed once, not because it was funny, but because my brain needed to let pressure out somewhere. "So let me get this straight," I said. "They are threatening to put a lien on my house because my driveway has snow tracks, while they have not legally covered the emergency access road for almost 2 winters. Glenn put his palms flat on the map. That would be a colorful but accurate summary. I asked him who had been clearing Briar during storms all this time. He gave me a look. "You know who," and I did, me. Not officially, not in writing, not because I had to, but because I had the rig. I knew the road, and I was already there. I had been taking that turn after my county route for years, dropping the blade and making 2 passes because old Mrs. Kellen used oxygen, because the Parkers had little kids, because it felt like the decent thing to do. Nobody had asked much, nobody had paid much, and honestly I never cared, because around here you do things like that and do not make a parade out of it. But now those same passes, those quiet favors, had become invisible to the people writing me fines. Glenn made copies for me. Maps, filings, expiration notices, county code sections, complaint procedures, about 40 pages in all. Cost me $22.30, plus whatever was left of my faith in neighborhood leadership. Before I left, he said, "Mason, be careful with this. You are not wrong. But not being wrong does not mean people will thank you." That line stuck with me harder than any legal code. That afternoon I took everything to an attorney named Priya Sloan, whose office was above a bakery on Water Street, which made all her legal advice smell faintly like cinnamon rolls. Priya was small, sharp, and quiet in a way that made loud people nervous. She handled property disputes, easements, rural association messes, all the kind of things that sound boring until somebody threatens your home. She read every page while I sat across from her, trying not to tap my foot through the floor. After a long while, she removed her glasses and said, "They picked the wrong snowplow driver." I said, "I would like that on a shirt." She did not smile, which is how I knew she was worth the money. She explained that Evelyn and the council could enforce reasonable aesthetic rules if they were properly written, but the snow track language was shaky, maybe not even valid because it was arbitrary and functionally impossible in that climate. The lien threat was the bigger issue, because escalating fines over unavoidable winter use could be challenged as bad faith enforcement. Then she tapped Glenn's map. "But this," she said, "this is where they are exposed." The council had a duty to maintain access. If they failed and emergency services were delayed, it was not just embarrassing, it was liability with teeth. I asked what I should do. She leaned back, folded her hands and said, "Do your job, exactly your job. Do not threaten them, do not block them. Do not touch their road unless you are properly authorized or contracted. Let the record show who was responsible and who failed." I sat there for a minute, because I understood what she was saying and I hated part of it. If I did not clear Bry Hook like usual during the next storm, people would get stuck. Not Evelyn in some symbolic way, real people. Neighbors, the kind who waved at me and lent tools and brought casseroles when Dad passed. Priya must have seen it on my face because she softened a little. "Mason," she said, "you've been covering their obligation out of goodwill. They are now using their authority to punish you while benefiting from that goodwill. You are not harming the neighborhood by refusing to subsidize their negligence. You are revealing the negligence." That sounded clean in an office with warm air and bakery smells. It felt less clean 3 nights later when the storm sirens started whispering through the county alert system. Snow came in after dark. Small at first, harmless looking, the kind that makes porch lights glow pretty and fools people into thinking winter is in a generous mood. By midnight, the wind turned mean. By 2, the county radio was all clipped voices and static. Visibility down. Drifts forming east of town. County 9 slick under hardpack. I kissed Natalie goodbye at 3:15. She was standing in the kitchen in one of my sweatshirts, arms crossed, not saying what both of us knew. "Be safe," she said. "I will. And Mason." I stopped at the door. "Do not let Evelyn turn you into someone you are not." I nodded, but I did not answer, because I was not completely sure where that line was anymore. My route was ugly from the start. The snow was dry on top but heavy underneath, the kind that curls off the blade in thick slabs and freezes to every metal edge. I cleared the school road, then the clinic route, then the access by the volunteer fire station. Around 6:30, pale light barely showing behind the clouds, I came up on the Briar Hook turn. Habit pulled at my hands. I had made that turn so many times my body wanted to do it without permission. I slowed, just a little. The road into Briar Hook was already half swallowed, the entrance soft with drift, the sign wearing a white cap. I could see the first mailbox down the lane, then nothing but blowing snow. I thought of Mrs. Callan's oxygen tanks, the Parker kids, old Wayne Dobbins with the bad hit. Then I thought of Evelyn's laminated notice on my gate, final demand before lien review. I thought of Dad's workbench. I thought of Natalie saying, "Do not let her turn you into someone you are not." So I took one breath, checked the county route list, clicked to my dash, and kept going. That was the strangest part. It did not feel like revenge. Revenge has heat in it. This felt cold and exact, like setting down a weight I had carried so long I forgot it was not mine. By late morning, the storm had dropped 14 inches and was still climbing. My phone started buzzing around 11. First it was Wayne Dobbins. "Mason," he said, "you coming through Briarhook today?" I kept my voice steady. "I am on assigned county priority routes. Private road maintenance has to go through the council." There was a pause. The council could not organize a sandwich, he muttered, then hung up. Then came Messley, calling from the hospital during her break. "People are talking," she said quietly. "Evelyn is telling everyone you are refusing to help because you are angry about fines." I stared through the windshield at a wall of white and felt my jaw tighten. "I am refusing to do unpaid, unauthorized work on a road they are legally responsible for," I said. "I know," she said, but that is not how she was telling it. 10 minutes later, Evelyn called. I let it ring twice, mostly because I'm petty enough to enjoy 2 rings, then answered. "Mr. Reed," she said. with no hello and no fake smile in her voice this time. Briarhook Lane is currently impassable, I said. That sounds like a maintenance issue for the council. Do not play games with me, she snapped. Residents are trapped. I turned down the radio. Evelyn, your registered snow contract expired 18 months ago. That silence was the first honest thing I had ever heard from her. Then she said, I do not know what you think you found. I found county filings, I said. They were in a building open to the public, which I know is not as exclusive as a council meeting, but it worked. Her voice dropped. You are putting this community at risk over a personal grievance. No, I said, and for the first time I let a little steel into my voice. You put the community at risk when you chose to police tire marks instead of renewing the contract for an emergency access corridor. She inhaled sharply. This will be reported. I almost smiled. Please do. By 2 that afternoon, the snow total passed 19 inches. Drifts on Briarhook were higher than some car hoods, especially near the north bend where the wind rolled across the open field and dumped everything into the road like it had a grudge. Dispatch called me at 2:40. Read, we have multiple access complaints from Briarhook Meadows. Confirm status. I answered exactly the way Priya told me to. Briarhook Lane is a private association road with secondary emergency access designation. No active contractor registration on file. I am not assigned to clear it without county authorization. The dispatcher went quiet, then said, stand by. 15 minutes later, my supervisor came on. Mason, county inspector is en route. Stay on your priority list until directed. Copy that? And just like that, the thing Evelyn tried to make personal stepped out into daylight. Around 4:30, the sky had gone dark early. That bruised winter dark that makes every headlight look lonely. I finished the clinic loop and pulled up near the entrance to Briarhook. Not into it, just close enough to see. A sedan was stuck sideways at the mouth of the lane. Wayne Dobbins was out there with a shovel, moving snow in angry little bites. 2 neighbors stood beside him, bundled up so thick they looked like laundry piles with eyes. And then I saw Evelyn's Mercedes, half buried near the curb, hazard lights blinking through the storm like a rich person's distress signal. She was standing beside it in a long wool coat that had no business being in that weather, one hand holding her phone, the other pointing at people, as if pointing could move snow. When she saw my plow truck, she started walking toward me, fast, slipping once, catching herself on Wayne's shovel handle, which she did not look thrilled about. By the time she reached my door, her face was red from cold and fury, and for once, her perfect hair had surrendered to the same weather as the rest of us. I rolled the window down halfway. She looked up at me, snow blowing between us, and said, you need to fix this right now. And I said, under whose authority? Under whose authority? I said it calm, maybe too calm, because Evelyn blinked like she'd expected, shouting, and did not know what to do with paperwork, wearing boots. She planted both hands on the edge of my open window and leaned closer, snow collecting on the shoulders of that expensive wool coat. Under the authority of basic human decency, she snapped, people cannot get out of their homes. I looked past her at Wayne Dobbins still digging with that bent shovel, at the sedan stuck crooked, at 2 teenagers trying to push it while their mother yelled advice from the porch like volume could replace traction. I know, I said. That is why emergency access roads are supposed to be maintained. Her eyes narrowed. Do not lecture me. Evelyn, I said. You fined me almost $3,000 because my driveway showed evidence of a truck doing truck things in winter. You threatened my house over tire marks in snow. So before I drop my blade on a road your council failed to maintain, I need to know who is authorizing it, who is paying for it, and who is accepting liability if something goes wrong. She gave a hard little laugh, the kind people make when they are scared, but still trying to sound offended. Liability, really? You are standing here watching your neighbors suffer and you want paperwork. I nodded once. Funny how paperwork only feels cruel when it starts asking questions back. That one landed. I saw it in her face. Just a flash, anger mixing with the first trace of calculation. Then headlights rolled up behind her, slow through the blowing snow, amber light flashing across the trees. A county truck stopped at the entrance, and out stepped Inspector Ray Calder, a broad-shouldered man with a knit cap pulled low and the permanent expression of somebody who had seen every excuse humans can invent for not doing the one thing they were supposed to do. He carried a clipboard under his jacket to keep it dry, which told me right away this was not going to be a friendly neighborhood chat. Afternoon, he said, looking at the blocked lane, then at me, then at Evelyn, who represents the Briarhook Meadows Council. Evelyn straightened so fast she nearly slipped. I do. Evelyn Strake, President. Ray nodded and wrote that down. Are you currently under an active snow removal contract for Briarhook Lane and the North Bend Emergency Corridor? Evelyn opened her mouth, paused, then said, We have historically had arrangements. Ray looked up. That was not my question. Active contract, yes or no? The wind moved through the spruce trees behind us, and for about 3 seconds the whole neighborhood seemed to hold its breath. No, Evelyn said, not at this exact moment. Ray wrote again. Do you have an alternate contractor on call, registered with the county? We are in discussions. Yes or no? No. He clicked his pen, and I swear that little sound was louder than the storm. Then you were in violation of County Access Code 11.6, failure to maintain a designated secondary emergency corridor during an active weather event. If fire, EMS, or law enforcement response is delayed because of this blockage, the council may face civil penalties and liability review. Evelyn's face changed. Not a big dramatic collapse, not some movie villain melting into the snow, but the color left her cheeks in a way even the cold could not explain. She looked at Ray, then at the road, then finally at me, and for the first time since I had known her, she looked less like a president and more like a woman who had signed things she never bothered to understand. Ray turned to me. Mason, are you available to clear this, if authorized? I said, equipment is ready. Rate and liability need to be handled by the responsible party. Ray looked at Evelyn. That would be the council. Evelyn swallowed. We can approve emergency service. I shook my head. Not like that. In writing. Her eyes came back to mine. Sharp again for a second. You cannot be serious. I'm very serious, I said. I learned that from you. Wayne Dobbins, from somewhere behind her, muttered loud enough for half the block to hear. Lord, I picked the right day to shovel slow. A few people looked down, trying not to laugh, and even Ray's mouth twitched. Evelyn did not enjoy that. She stepped closer to my truck, lowering her voice. Mason, please. That word surprised me more than anything else that day. Not because it was kind, but because it had finally cost her something. I let the silence sit there for a moment, not to humiliate her. Not exactly, but because some moments need room to become real. Then I reached across the seat and pulled out the folder Priya had helped me assemble. I had the fine notices, the lien warning, the county maps, the expired filing, and a short emergency authorization form she had drafted in case this exact thing happened, because good attorneys are basically pessimists with letterhead. I handed Evelyn the form through the window. Emergency clearing authorization, one-time service, council responsibility, council liability, payment due within 30 days. She stared at it like I had handed her a dead fish. Sign that, I said, and I will clear the road. She took the pen with stiff fingers. Before she signed, I added, and tomorrow morning, the fines against my property get withdrawn. All of them, written notice. She stopped. Mason, all of them, I said. Plus the lien review disappears. Plus the snow surface rule gets suspended until the next Oakland Council meeting, where residents can vote on whether tire tracks in Minnesota winter are a sign of moral decay. Wayne laughed out loud at that, then tried to hide it with a cough. Evelyn's jaw tightened. Anything else? Yes, I said. You resigned as president after the emergency meeting. The look she gave me could have peeled paint. That is not happening. Then I handed the form back toward her. Find another plow. For a second, nobody moved. The teenagers by the stuck sedan stopped pushing. Ray watched quietly. Snow hissed across the road, filling in every footprint as fast as people made them. Evelyn looked behind her at the trapped cars, the blocked lane, the residents watching from porches and windows. And I think that was when she understood the worst part. I was not forcing her to do anything. I was just refusing to keep protecting her from the consequences of what she had already done. Her hand trembled slightly when she signed. Fine, she said, voice thin and hard. I will resign after the meeting. I took the form, checked the signature, then looked at Ray. Good enough, Ray nodded. Good enough. I rolled up the window, eased the truck into gear, and dropped the blade. There is a particular sound a plow blade makes when it bites into heavy packed snow, a deep metal scrape under the engine growl, and I had heard it thousands of times. But that evening, it felt different. The truck pushed forward, slow at first, snow rolling off the blade in thick white curls, headlights tunneling through the dusk. People stepped back. Wayne lifted his shovel like he was saluting a parade he did not fully approve of. I made the first pass down Briarhook, then turned near the north bend back carefully. and came through again. Driveways opened, the stuck sedan got free, porch lights flicked on one by one. Warm little squares in all that blue winter dark. Nobody cheered, which I appreciated. Real life usually does not know when to clap, but people watched, and that was enough. By the time I finished, my gloves were wet, my neck hurt, and Evelyn was sitting in her Mercedes with both hands on the steering wheel, staring straight ahead while her hazard lights blinked against the snowbank. The next morning, an email went out to every resident. All outstanding snow surface violations were rescinded pending policy review. Mine were named in a separate attached letter. Balance 0, lien review withdrawn. At the emergency meeting 2 nights later, people showed up who had not attended a council meeting in years. Wayne came with a furnace and asked if coffee counted as a protected beverage under architectural harmony. Natalie sat beside me and squeezed my hand under the folding table when Evelyn read her resignation in a voice so controlled it sounded stapled together. The snow surface rule died by unanimous vote, except Evelyn, who abstained so hard you could almost hear it. A new maintenance contract was approved before anybody went home. Life did not magically become perfect after that. Brahook still had gossip, potholes, crooked mailboxes, and people who put inflatable reindeer too close to the road. Evelyn stayed in the neighborhood, though she stopped walking Churchill up my driveway, which I consider personal growth for both of them. My driveway still gets tracks every winter. My plow truck still sits by the garage. Dad's spruce trees still lean over the lane when the snow gets heavy, keeping their old secrets. And sometimes, when I come home before sunrise and see my tire marks pressed into fresh powder, I think about how close I came to paying that first fine just to keep things quiet. Maybe that would have been easier. Maybe fewer people would have been angry for a day. Maybe Wayne's hip would have fagged me. But I also know this. Some people do not stop because you are reasonable. They stop because the rules they used as a weapon finally point back at them. So you tell me, was I wrong to hold the line when it meant my neighbors got stuck for a few hours? Or was that the only way to make the council finally own the danger they had created? Would you have cleared the road first and fought later? Or would you have done exactly what I did? Drop your take in the comments. Because I have learned that nothing gets a neighborhood talking faster than snow, power, and one person finding out the rulebook has pages they forgot to read.